I think that when you ask like, what are the red flags? I think too often, like our doctors will say like, well, a 20 to 45 day cycle is normal.
God.
Yeah. And so people who have a 20 to 40 day cycle are now using ovulation predictors to capture poorly timed ovulation, which really increases their risk for miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
And and so I don't want to look at people say, what's a normal period? What's a whatever? And I was like, no, I only want to talk about what is optimal. This is where, and if we look at like what's optimal for fertility, we can extrapolate and say like, that's optimal for all of us. Right. Because when we're in our most fertile state, we are in our most healthiest state. Yes. Right.
What's up, ladies? Welcome to the health class She Deserves, where we talk all about women's health and bodies, how to know yourself better, what the research says versus discourse online, and of course, our personal experiences. I'm your host, Autumn Paone, and today I'm joined by reproductive acupuncturist and health tech pioneer, Kirsten Karchmer. Over the past 20 years, Kirsten has worked with over 10,000 women struggling with their cycles and trying to conceive. As one of the first reproductive acupuncturists in North America, she has seen firsthand how women are profoundly disempowered by a lack of education on their own bodies. In an effort to close the gap and provide women with affordable, personalized information, she created Conceivable, the first natural fertility app that goes beyond simply predicting ovulation and offers you a complete program that can actually improve your natural fertility and give you the power. She is also the author of Seeing Red, a book on how to read your cycle, improve your symptoms, end your period shame, and reclaim your body, and the woman behind Brazen, a line of herbal supplements specifically designed to ease the pain and suffering associated with periods. I'm so excited to have her here today. Kirsten, welcome to class.
Thank you. Thank you for such a nice introduction. Appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. I'd love to begin with a brief overview of your journey. When you were first starting your career, reproductive acupuncturists were essentially unheard of in this part of the world. So what inspired you to pursue this path, and how did it evolve into the projects that you lead today?
So interesting. It's really been a circuitous path, right? Many different journeys, but I was actually a linguistics professor when I was in my early 20s, and then I got really sick and ended up going to see an acupuncturist. I was diagnosed with MS and it's really serious. I couldn't walk. And the acupuncturist explained to me, he said, look, here's the deal. When you were born, your body was very strong and your disease was very weak. But then I was a competitive athlete. So I trained and trained and trained like crazy my whole childhood. And he said, on the outside, you looked healthier and healthier, stronger, fitter, more muscular. But on the inside, you were training so hard while you were also trying to grow and mature that at some point, your disease started getting stronger because your constitution, your body on the inside got weaker. And then by the time you got to 19 years old, your disease was quite active, but your constitution was very weak. And if we can reverse that, theoretically, you can go into remission. And then that was what happened. Like within a year, I wasn't using a cane anymore. I was hardly having episodes. And that lasted for about 30 years. I went through menopause. I kind of had to start over a little bit. That really disrupted things. And building Conceivable has been a little bit stressful. So, but apart from that, and so what happened is I was like, after that first day, I was like, I'm going to acupuncture college.
Yeah.
I didn't really know anything about it, even though I was very suspicious about it. And I was like, acupuncture's for psychics, like that's not a real thing. But the way that he explained what was happening on my body was so simple. It's kind of like chess. It's so simple to understand, but hard to play. I was like, why doesn't everyone know about this way of relating with health? And in particular, when I was in acupuncture school, in Chinese medicine, every symptom means something. It's diagnostically relevant. So even if you get an eye twitch on your upper eyelid every day at 3:00 in the afternoon, that tells me something, right? A lot of things. And so, but your period, we have so many biometrics from the menstrual cycle that by literally, if I only looked at someone's menstrual cycle, I could tell you so much about their overall health. How many days between period, how many days of bleeding, how much blood can they make? Is it clotty? Is it crampy? How regular it is? What do their temperatures look like? What's the color of the blood? It all gives us this robust information about what's working and what's not working. And so it made perfect sense. I was like, I'm going to be the fattest FUCK in reproductive medicine. Like I am going to just own this space. And so I kind of just started living into that and ultimately ended up having 3 clinics in 3 cities with about 20 acupuncturists. And we took care of at least 200 to 300 fertility patients a week. We had an IVF center in our acupuncture clinic, and we had an acupuncture clinic in another IVF center. So long answer, but sort of long story.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to of, being helped by something or something helping them in their lowest moment or their darkest moment. And then just, having a complete life shift because of it. So that's really amazing that you were so inspired by your own journey that you went to do it and help so many other people, and especially women, because obviously we love women and women's health on this podcast.
Yes, and women need a lot of help right now, especially right now in the political climate that's happening. Like our rights are really being eroded, so we really need to teach women. Like the time is now for us to teach women how to care for their own bodies, to take ownership back of most of that journey. I'm not averse to using medicine, Western medicine, surgery, pharmaceuticals, but the majority of the work can be done by us ladies if you know what to do and how to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. When you started where you did your education, you started working, with patients then and working with a lot of them. What is like the most, alarming things that you see that women just don't even know about their own bodies?
I think if it's one thing, it's an umbrella. It's that like our physicians are not informing us with accurate enough information. I think in Western medicine, if something isn't a disease state, it's nothing. And that means that if we can't diagnose what's wrong with you because there's a clear, straight cause, it doesn't exist. And so then we don't do anything about it. And then they try to get pregnant or whatever, and then they have surgery to remove the endo because it just keeps going on. And the woman is just keeps saying like, yeah, this is happening. This is happening. They're like, I don't know. Nothing's wrong. You're like, something's definitely wrong. And so I think that we've been so gaslighted that now women are starting to listen to that. And so then they're like, they tell me all the time, I know something's wrong, but my doctor can't figure it out. And I was like, well, you're exhausted. You can't digest food. You sleep 4 hours. Like it's to me, I always say, people ask me about unexplained infertility. And I was like, I've never seen a true case of unexplained infertility, meaning there may not be a diagnosable cause of why this person isn't getting pregnant. But when we look at the presentation, oh, of course this person isn't getting pregnant. They got a 22-day cycle. They got 1 day of bleed. Like there just aren't enough things working that allow us to get and stay pregnant. And that's what we have to figure it out. So I guess that the takeaway from that is basically like, if you really think something's wrong, and after this conversation, you'll kind of be able to see the things that are worth paying attention to, and then, how we can potentially start to repair those ourselves.
Yeah. I love that there's no such thing as really unexplained infertility. Like in your experience, like it can always be tracked back to something. And on top of, typical Western models and the historic systemic stigma around women's health and lack of education, as you pointed out, not just in like at a societal level, in doctors' offices, in the places that we're supposed to be trusting. And not to like foster a distrust of your doctor, but there are things that you need to be aware of so you know what to ask and what red flags to look out for.
I think that actually AI is really helpful right now. So, if you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, nothing's wrong or whatever, like, I'm not saying use GPT as your doctor. It can help you to start to see, like, is that true? Like what the biggest myth that I hear physicians perpetuating is that we can use birth control to regulate your period. That's just a bold-faced lie. Yeah. Like, why would you? They're like, well, we'll just put you on birth control for 3 months and that'll regulate your period. I'm like, there's not a strip of data. So I always say, whoever you're seeing, even if you're seeing me, if you're seeing you, if you're seeing your doctor, I don't care if you're seeing the president, afterwards, go check their work. People say, oh, I'm taking a combination of myo-inositol and D-chiro because that's what my doctor or that's what TikTok said for my PCOS. I'm like, yeah, but it's not, D-chiro is not safe in pregnancy, right? It has been shown to have a negative impact on egg quality. So so you just go in and you're like, is myo D-chiro safe in pregnancy? Yes or no? No, it's not. Okay, well then, it doesn't matter who told you what, just revert back to the data. When in doubt, if you're just like, is that true? Like, can birth control really permanently fix my period? No, there's no data on that either.
No.
So that's the biggest thing is like, start checking everyone's work. Don't trust anybody, including me, including you, just check our work. Become an informed consumer of healthcare.
Exactly. I love that. And that's one of the main goals of this podcast is to teach women what questions to be asking, how to do their own research, how to know their body best and advocate for themselves. And I love what you say about so many doctors I hear saying that birth control will regulate your cycle. Like, look, birth control has its uses and it's a very, very personal decision. And I've talked about it before and I won't, get into the whole gamut of everything. But that, like you said, bold-faced lie, it is the opposite. It gets rid of your cycle. That's what it does.
Right. If you block ovulation, you're not regulating anything.
No, you're not. Yeah, you're not cycling at all. And so when I hear doctors saying that, like, semantics matter, especially in women's health when there's been so much like just lies throughout history told to women about their bodies. Semantics matter. And I don't trust that every doctor knows exactly how birth control works because I've heard some crazy stuff from doctors on the internet.
I know, like people always on TikTok will come on my live. I do a live show every day and they'll be like, "Are you a doctor?" I'm like, "Well, I was the first board certified reproductive acupuncturist, but I'm a kind of doctor, but I'm not a Western medical doctor." And like, "Well, you don't have any right to be talking about this." And I was like, "Well, I am licensed. I'm not a licensed acupuncturist anymore." I said I was licensed by the Texas State Board of Medical Examiner. So I have a medical license. But the reality is that while I might not be a Western medicine doctor, I am the kind of doctor that your doctor goes to when she can't get pregnant.
Exactly.
That's like my joke response to that because we've given doctors like that they can't do wrong and that we shouldn't question them. In fact, there's I love the podcast This American Life because I can't sleep often and I listen to it when I can't sleep. But there's a really old episode of probably from like the story comes back from like 1950s. These two women were in the hospital like in a small town on the same day and they went home with the wrong babies.
Oh my God, that's my worst
And one
fear.
mom knew right away. She was like, "Our baby had brown eyes," or some like our baby was 8 pounds and this baby is now a week older and it's 2 pounds lighter. And she tells her husband, she's like, I don't think this is our baby. And he goes, "Where?" She's like, "We should go back to the hospital." He's like, this is what the dad said. The husband said, he goes, "We are not going to embarrass that doctor by telling him he gave us the wrong baby." He goes, "We got a perfectly good baby and we're keeping it."
Oh my God. The things that people will do to protect a man's ego. Get over yourself.
And they did. And they didn't like, and they were interviewing, like, look up shit, I almost poured my water over my computer. Like one girl, as she was growing up, she knew. One girl did not know. Like, she didn't know because, and he told her, she's like, "I just was not part of, like, this family was so similar. They were all musicians. They were all into, mathematics." She's like, "I wanted to do, something complete, read books and do whatever, she's like, I just was not one of them." And she goes, "When I found out, it was actually such a relief. Sad and crazy and everything." She goes, but I knew the whole time, I'm like, I'm not one of these people. And, but you're right. And so I think that again, I don't want to vilify doctors. I work with a lot of amazing, brilliant doctors. And so I don't want to extrapolate like some doctors' behavior that's not useful into everybody's. I just want to be careful about that. But I do think that the antidote, because you can't know. You just can't know how smart your doc, especially like I found like the more charismatic the doctor is, the patients will give really good reviews. He's like, "He's so nice," but he or she may or may not be a good doctor. And then conversely, if the doctor has really bad like one of my MS doctors had the worst bedside manner. I hated him, but he was like the guy. He was the expert in my type, my particular problem. And so knowing that, I'm just like, all right, he's not going to hold my hand. He's not going to be nice, but I know he's the guy who can get the stuff done. And I just don't have the expectation. So, I think really, I hope that our conversation really helps lay a very simple foundation for the listeners about, what are the things to pay attention to and what are the things to worry about and what are things to push hard on and what are things to like, not pay as much attention to.
Exactly. Well, let's get into that a little bit about when it comes to our cycles, whether I know like you obviously are reproductive, do a lot with like reproductive work and stuff, but just in general, whether or not a woman is trying to get pregnant, what are like the red flag things that maybe are written off as super normal, but really should be addressed?
Let me flip it into telling you, let's talk about what's ideal.
Okay.
So I think that, and then you can see if you're far from the ideal, right? Then you know that you're not, anything that's outside of the ideal should be a red flag. Not a serious, you don't have disease, you don't need to jump to a hospital or anything. It's like, It's a check engine light
Mm-hmm.
of what's going on.
Right.
And while what I work on currently is fertility, what we're building, like the software that we're building, will ultimately be for every single thing a woman needs from before she gets her first period all the way through postmenopause.
Mhm.
Because the way we approach women's health is exactly the same no matter where on the journey you are,
Mm-hmm.
which is first, figure out the underlying issues. Second, figure out how they're connected to each other. Third, use diet, lifestyle, behavioral health, supplementation, and mindset work to do as much repair work as you can on that,
Mm-hmm.
and then see what's left.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where you want to start diagnosing. And so I think that when you ask, like, what are the red flags? I think too often, like, our doctors will say, like, well, a 20 to 45 day cycle is normal.
God.
Yeah. And so people who have a 20 to 40 day cycle are now using ovulation predictors to capture poorly timed ovulation, which really increases their risk for miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to look at people say, what's a normal period? What's a whatever? And I was like, no, I only want to talk about what is optimal.
Mm.
This is where, and if we look at like what's optimal for fertility, we can extrapolate and say, like, that's optimal for all of us. Right. Because when we're in our most fertile state, we are in our most healthiest state.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So here's, I've said this like a trillion times. Okay. So first of all, your energy is good. So on a 1 to 10 without caffeine or exercise for 2 whole days, you got to do that part. What's a person's energy? So I like to see it 8 or above for optimal. 9, 10 is where the person is actually, their 9 maybe is like really, really good energy. When people say they're a 10 though, that's a trick question, because 10 is the person who'll be like, I have no shortage of energy. After this, I'm going to alphabetize my spices and then my socks. And then I'm going to go to Costco. And then I'm going to write a book. And then and it'll be 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I can't go to sleep. I'm like, okay, so that person is actually exhausted, but they are in such adrenal overdrive that they're just sucking the adrenals dry all day, but they don't know it because we have to turn the adrenals off before. And so you turn the adrenals off finally for those people. And then they're like,
yep.
And they think they have cancer. They're like, I must have cancer. I'm like, no, that's the real level of exhaustion that was underneath all that adrenaline. So energy is high. Then the period, 28 to 32 days, that makes ovulation occurring about cycle day 14 to 16. Later than that, the egg starts to break down and then we lose egg quality. So, and having an irregular cycle is almost always, not 100%, but often an indicator we need to look at blood sugar. Blood sugar can severely disrupt ovulation patterns. That's a first place to look. Then they're ovulating around cycle day 14 to 16. That means the egg, if you're trying, is perfect for fertilization. And there's good, clear, stretchy, abundant cervical discharge. And by that, I mean, literally, if you cracked an egg open and you pulled the yolk out and it's wet and slippery, that's what good cervical discharge looks like. So people don't want to talk about this. I'll talk about all of it.
Yeah.
Here's the part that seems like a unicorn that every person that's listening is going to be like, that's a lie. You don't have any PMS. There are 50 different symptoms associated with PMS, pretty much any symptom from ovulation until your period comes. Breast tenderness, bloating, migraines, acne, skin changes, fatigue, sleep changes, weight gain, like a little bit of weight gain is normal, but some people gain a lot of weight, so on and so on. All of those tell us in Western medicine, the liver's job is to use and eliminate hormones. One of their jobs, the liver, it has a lot of jobs. But so when it's working really well, the hormonal changes that happen after ovulation get used and metabolized, and you don't have any pushback. When the liver is a little bit wonky, it starts to bog down and get stagnant, and you get things like emotional stagnation. You can get swelling in the tissues, which cause fluid stagnation, which cause acne, so on and so on. Then when the period comes, only 4 days of bleeding. Soak a tampon or a pad about every 4 hours, not more or less. No cramping, no clotting, no spotting, fresh red blood. And temperatures, if you're taking your temperatures, which can be extremely valuable. From ovulation until the period starts, the temperatures within a couple of days get to the 98 and stay there until the day before your period.
Now I'm like looking at my app to look at my temperatures because I'm so
You're
curious.
like, hold on, what are my temperatures? We pioneered ways to use temperatures very differently than just predicting ovulation. We found correlations to temperatures after ovulation and progesterone levels. So it's a way for us to check.
Yeah.
Like the 3 things like that those things are like sort of optimal for everything. And then to stay pregnant, the most important 3 are like high energy, high temperatures, because we need enough progesterone and we need good blood to make a good enough lining to support implantation. Any deviation from that does not mean you need to worry or freak out or even call your doctor. But I would start to list them and see how many, and see like if a person tells me, oh, my energy is a 2 out of 10, like in our app, the app starts asking, well, okay, let's try to figure out why you're tired.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what you're eating. Oh, I only eat fast food every day. Okay, so part of it is we need better nutrition. Tell me when you eat, do you have gas, bloating, sugar cravings, fatigue? I have all of those. So that means that the food that's going in isn't effectively being broken down and absorbed to be turned into energy and resources to making blood and hormones. Or what's your stress level like? Because people will say, well, I'm really stressed, but how does that have to do with my fatigue? But when we're stressed and we're in flight or fright, we're hypervigilant and we're using a crap ton of energy. We're like, oh my God, 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 I gotta Google, I gotta freak, I gotta tell somebody, I gotta call somebody, I'm freaking out. That burns through a lot of energy and that will exhaust you. And plus it burns through a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, which also can disrupt all of it. So
yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that, to those two extremes of just like feeling groggy and like you can't do anything. And then the opposite of like when you're actually trying to get rest, I think happens for a lot of people, where that's grogginess in the morning when they need to wake up, and then complete cortisol spikes at when melatonin's supposed to be being made instead. And so I think that's definitely relatable for a lot of people. What's your advice then to like first little, like if somebody's like, okay, I'm far from ideal, I'm not in the optimal phase, what's your advice of, just baby steps that people can take, like little actionable things if they're like, that's not me at all, I'm not ideal?
well, the first thing I would do, so, we just came out with a new app that we've been working on literally for 10 years, which is a digital twin of me. It's an AI version of me. If you don't know what a digital twin is, because that's kind of a new term. And I built this app in response to a study that I read about 10 years ago that said that only 3% of couples could afford fertility treatments. And while I had treated tens of thousands of women in my clinic, I was like, that means 97% of the women who want to have families who aren't getting pregnant probably won't. And I was like, I need to do something about that. Like, family is really important to me. And because I have this feeling, this opinion, that women should be the most revered people on the planet because we literally are the future of the species.
Yes, undoubtedly. I would agree with that.
Her health at the time, and the man's too, but the health of the couple at the time of conception predicts the health of the offspring. And if we want to evolve genetically in the most optimal way, we want to take care of women much better. We want to teach them exactly how to care for themselves. And so what I would do if you heard those red flags and you're like, I don't know, and it's okay if you're not trying, as long as you're willing to put up with a, talk about fertility. Think fertility meaning optimal. Just download the app, because the app is free for the whole first month. In 1 month, you can get a lot of work done.
Yeah.
Just follow it. We just built this new, I think that there is a place for supplements. I used to not. In my earlier practice, I used to only use Chinese herbal medicine, but the data becomes so robust, not for supplements, for fertility. There are no supplement. People say, like, what do you think about maca? I'm like, for what purpose? And they'll say, for fertility. I'm like, nothing is for fertility. Nothing is for fertility, because fertility isn't like vitamin D deficiency where you just take fertility and you get more fertile.
Right.
It's a multifactorial problem, right? That is highly related to how we're living, what we're eating, how we're digesting, how we're stressing, how we're sleeping, the environment we live in, all of those things, which can be changed by her and doesn't need an external intervention. So what I found is that women would tell me, I was like, what are you taking? And they would give me this huge basket. And I was like, okay, let's go through it. And like, why are you taking this? Like, I don't know. I saw it on TikTok. I'm like, throw that away. Why are you taking that? I don't know. Like, my doctor told me. Where'd you get it? Costco, throw it away. I mean, just, grocery store, most Amazon supplements are so pathetically low quality. Literally, it's my current opinion, I would rather you take nothing than a low quality product. But we had a line of clinical grade supplements that were like, comparable to like Metagenics, like really, really high quality, but they were so expensive, like quality in, expensive out. And so we kept trying to lower the prices. And it was still like, if I want you to take 6 or 7 supplements, it was like $500. And my whole mission is to make, all of this affordable for all people. And we just partnered with a new manufacturer this month. So it's still kind of working out a few bugs where in the app, it makes recommendations like it did before, but you can just hit a button and it will just take you to your cart. And it'll make an individual, like 30 individual packs for you for the whole month of all the supplements. Same quality as like Metagenics or Thorne, at about 50% less than you would pay on Amazon even.
Wow.
So what used to cost in our store like $500, we've gotten the price down to about $50.
Wow.
Depending on what's in your pack, it's usually like $50 to $60, depending on what's in it. And then it's all personalized, it's all packaged up for you, delivered to your house, and no plastic, which is important for this purposes. So, I think that what the app is designed to do is to do the baby steps, figure out those underlying issues, and then start saying, okay, I'm going to make all your menus for you. And I'm going to make your menus like, this is sort of the benefit of 20 years of experience. Like, how do you get people to change their diet? You make it so easy. So they eat the same thing for breakfast. It's just something that we used in our clinic forever. They have bone broth for a snack. The meal is like, all of the meals are curated exactly from the consultation. What does this person need? Do they have PCOS? They need low glycemic. Do they have endo? They need low anti-inflammatory. Do they have scanty bleeding? They need to make bloods. We need B and B and iron. Then it makes the menus. So what it does is it makes a double dinner so that then the people have enough to have lunch the next door. Little hacks like that. What we want to try to do is figure out what are the smallest steps to make. But regardless where you are, like if you know, like you had a ton of red flags, start with energy.
Okay.
Right. Really pay attention to your energy and start thinking and really start paying day to day. What happens? When do I have a better day? What is related to my sleep? How's the quality of my food? Like, is there enough nutrition? And some people say like, well, like I'm a vegan. That might like it gets I mean, it is like being a vegan or vegetarian does significantly make it harder to get pregnant. It's not because being a vegan does that. It's just it takes a lot more intention to get all the nutrients that you need for optimal fertility on a vegan or a vegetarian diet. And so you have to be more fastidious about what you're eating. And so, but we do want to make sure that we figure out, is it a nutritional issue? Is it a rest issue? Is it a stress issue? Is it a gut issue? And start to work on those things. Again, you can do that yourself. You can use the app for free for at least a month and then just ditch it after you figure out how to do it. Lots of ways to do it. But every single time, once you can take all of those high level things and you really boil it down, like maybe the person is really tired. And the big thing is she cannot digest. Every time she eats, she gets super bloated and really gassy. And sometimes you just fix that issue and then the energy comes back because she starts getting nourished by her food.
Right.
So it doesn't always, even though there's sometimes a lot of symptoms, sometimes you just, if you can, and this is what the app tries to do, is pinpoint like, what are the few things, if this person does this, we are definitely going to see a change. And then it looks to measure, did it see that change? And then it keeps changing the plan so that you continue to make progress.
Wow. So I'd love to know, because obviously most of us have more energy in our follicular phase. And by the time we're at like the end of our luteal phase, we don't feel like doing anything. Is there like there's a normal flow to that? Or like, how do we pinpoint when it's not just your luteal fatigue, it's like an actual hormone issue?
So if the fatigue, it just depends on how significant it is. You will be slightly more tired.
Okay.
And especially some people really produce, it's the progesterone, right? Progesterone is relaxing. It's a smooth muscle relaxant. And so some people really produce a lot of progesterone. Like I said before, a good proxy for how much progesterone you have is your temperature after ovulation. So if you're not pregnant, it should be around 98, 98.1, 98.2. Lower, we have work to do. And if it's higher, that's fine. It's pretty uncommon, but sometimes you do if it's consistently higher. But if it's usually 98.1 and suddenly it's 98.4, you're pregnant. So it's a very easy way, very easy early pregnancy test that almost nobody, not test, but like good approximation, much better than trying to figure out implantation bleeding and all those things. If you're taking your temperature and suddenly you see like either that if this is kind of your baseline and suddenly you're like, 2 or 3 tenths higher just out of the blue, or if it's going like this. So if the line on the chart is going this, that is a very strong, sometimes I would person would come to the clinic and I used to see their charts on paper before cell phones. Actually, that's how long I was in practice. But they'd show me their paper and I was like, oh, you're pregnant. And they're like, I just took a pregnancy test. How did you know? Without me even telling me, like, I can see on your charts. So I was just like,
oh my gosh. I actually always wondered that. So if you're not pregnant in your luteal phase, your temperature should be pretty much the same, like very
flat.
Steady. Okay.
Flat, and it should be, and even this it can be either, it's never going to be like a smooth line. There is, some fluctuation,
right.
But it shouldn't be more than like 2 tenths. So just like a little bit. If you see it like this, you'll also see PMS.
Gotcha. Okay. Very
so
good
the more
to know.
PMS, the more of this. So because this is like, this temperature is a little bit of a proxy of a relationship to progesterone. Progesterone is going up and down all the time. And when there's good hormone stability, you'll see a smooth line.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's a lot of hormone instability, we see a lot more fluctuation.
Wow. That's so much good information. I want to talk more about Conceivable. And can you just explain, maybe for somebody who doesn't know exactly what you mean by like an AI version of you?
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that and what exactly the purpose is?
What I saw, I do a live show on TikTok every day, and there's a couple thousand people there every day. So I get to talk to infertile and women who are just struggling with hormones and period problems every single day. And one of the things that I kept hearing was that, like, well, they were sending me screenshots. This is before I built the app, screenshots of like Prove and Anato, and like their screens, like my PGD is this, and it's on cycle day. And what does that mean? And what do I do? And I was getting like 100 a day of screenshots. Be like, what do I do? What does this mean? And I was like, I have the opinion that traditional trackers are quite injurious to women. They don't ever, you never see in any of those like, hey, it's probably better instead of trying to capture a 40-day ovulation because this really increases your risk for miscarriage. Let's figure out why that's going on and let's repair that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you actually don't need one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to go back to your question, what is conceivable and like, what is an AI twin? I wanted to give people access to me, to like my brain, how I think, how I problem solve, because I know what I do pretty much is pretty effective. It's not 100%, but it's effective. And so we took tens of thousands of hours of consultations to train an AI model to talk like me, think like me, diagnose like me. Even in the app, there's a section where if you're going to acupuncture, your acupuncture can talk to AI me acupuncturist. And so they can say, hey, what's this person's Chinese medicine diagnosis? And it'll give it a report. Like, this person has spleen qi deficiency in Chinese medicine talking.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. These are the points you should use. These are the herbs you should use. Because the whole goal is to get everybody doing the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? To be layering the same, like to have the same goal and the same interventions for everybody. So you go through a survey. The AI collects about 50 to 80 data points about your history, about how you live, about your period, all that stuff. And then it figures out, it makes a score, a conceivable score, and that predicts your likelihood of getting pregnant. So you can just download the app and check that now. You want that above 60. Women whose scores were above 60 were exponentially more likely to get pregnant. And most people start in the 20 to 30s. Don't be alarmed. Most of us have it just tells us there's a lot of small things that are going to work against you, and they're probably related to a lot of other things. And typically those numbers can come up pretty quickly. And then the AI asks you to stick out your tongue, and you stick out your tongue and take a picture of your tongue. And then the app uses vision AI to analyze that in the way that I would, and then gives you an explanation. Oh, your tongue's a little bit swollen. You told me earlier you only have 1 day of bleeding, but I can see how pale your tongue is. So that just reinforces that. See, your tongue's really cracked. I already told you we need to talk about more hydration, but you can see it on your tongue. We added this. It doesn't affect your score, what comes up on the tongue, but it does help people. Like when I say, digestion is really important, and then they stick out their tongue and their tongue is really swollen. And I was like, oh, wow, I can really see like the swelling in your tongue. That tells us digestion's really struggling. Sometimes if you give people more evidence, they start to get more confidence, and then they have things to look at. So it's like they drink more water and they're watching their tongue. Oh, my crack is getting better in my tongue. Usually when you provide that beneficial feedback to people, they get inside motivated and inspired to keep doing and doing more, which is our goal. Like, how do we layer more of these things onto it? Then you go talk to the chef. She answers some questions like, what week are your period? Is there anything you don't like? Blah, blah, blah. She makes all your menu plans. She makes your shopping list. She even connects you to Instacart. So if you don't want to shop, you can just pick what you want on thing and hit Instacart. It'll deliver your food to your house for you. And she can do therapy. So there's like it's cognitive. She basically does cognitive behavioral therapy and compassion therapy. And what we want is like, we don't want to replace traditional therapy. Mm-hmm. Like, people are really stressed. Mm-hmm. Women are really stressed. They're really worried. They have a lot of anxiety. And so, but when we hold those feelings in and those thoughts in, we go into flight or fright. We start overproducing adrenaline. The whole cascade starts. And so we wanted to have a place for them just to come and unload every single day and just talk about your husband, your wife, your whatever, like whatever you need to unload, your kid. If you hate your kid today, which everybody does some days, whatever it is, to just have a safe place to get feedback, for somebody to really listen to you, for not to be like, don't worry, like your baby's going to come, like all the things that happen.
Mhm.
And then what happens is the app is reaching out to her throughout the month and checking in. So like there are some buttons still to hit, but you're like, she'll like after cycle day 6, she'll say, so let's talk about your period. How many days of bleeding did you have? Blah, 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 blah. And then she'll give you more education. And then on that day, she takes all the information from the month that you've entered or tracked, because she tells you what to do and then she asks you to track it. And then she gives you a new score, and then she has a conversation. She's like, okay, so we're trying to get your energy up, but I still see that you're still doing CrossFit. Tell me how I can help you to find a different kind of exercise that's not going to drain the tank every single time, because we make a little bit of progress and then we're draining it. And so that's sort of the level of interaction that is, even in the starting, this is just the first version of this. It'll only get more native feeling and more like me, like more conversational and problem solving, like a real coach.
That is so cool. Like, it is so crazy the times that we're living in that this is even possible, but I love to see it being used in this way, because I think there's a lot of people just trying to use AI to make more money and to cut out workers. Like, people are concerned it's, taking jobs and stuff, but this is like such a useful way for women's health, a very, very neglected, you know, topic in general. And women are really struggling and have been struggling. And so it's just so cool to see new technology being used in this way, like on the forefront of things. Because typically, historically, new technology has first been applied to what can benefit men, what can benefit the rich. And this is the opposite. This is what can benefit women, and women who can't afford fertility treatment specifically, because like you said, only 3% can afford. And I just was speaking to an IVF doctor just a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about the cost of IVF, and it's $20,000 is on the cheaper end for an IVF
In
treatment.
that study that I read, it also said that in many countries, one IVF is the equivalent of a whole year's salary.
Wow. Yeah, it's
It's the only
crazy.
technology that has gotten more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like most, like, remember, you think about like the supercomputers, like from, well, you're younger than me, but like in the 80s, we had these enormous computers that took up a whole room. They're like $5 million. And now, you can have basically the same power computer on your phone for $500. And IVF, though, continues to get more and more expensive, which I think is unethical. And there's a few people, like the doctor that I used to work with actually quit seeing patients, went to Harvard, studied lean manufacturing for 2 years, and then opened a new IVF center called Positive in San Antonio for IVF is $7,500.
Wow.
And as good or better success rates.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Can you, while we're talking numbers, I know in our pre-interview you were talking about like some of the stats from Conceivable and how it's been helping people. Can you go over some of them again? Do you have
Yeah,
them?
sure. So, it was funny because, here I kind of thought I was like a little bit of a fatty best-selling author, like I, kind of a grandmother of reproductive acupuncture. And I was like, I'm like as good as they get. So if this app is even 50% as good as me, then that's pretty darn good. And so then we did the pilot. We had 100 women coming to the clinic, 105 women using the app, no human interaction with the app users. And I was like, yeah, I mean, if this can like get 50%, that'll be good. And then at the end of 4 months, our data scientists came back and they were like, you aren't going to believe what happened. I'm like, shit, it didn't work. And they're like, oh, it worked. And I said, how close was it to mine? And they're like, it beat you. And I was like, no, that's not possible. I'm the best. And they're like, it beat you by 6%. And at first I was really kind of embarrassed. And then I remembered in Chinese, they have all these like sayings in Chinese medicine, which actually I love that about just Chinese language even. They say the good doctor treats the patient. The great doctor treats society, but the master will learn how to make herself obsolete. And when I heard that data, I'm like, I just did it. I just made myself obsolete. And I felt really happy then, because I was like, all right, like I did something tiny bit impossible, what I thought was impossible. So what happened was, not only that, we had a 23% success rate in 4 months, which is actually not enough time. We needed 6 months, but we didn't have the budget to do the study for a whole 6 months, because typically if people are using the app, they need 3 months to fix the underlying problems. And then a perfectly healthy person will get pregnant about once every 4 months. So probably should extend it to 8 months. But even in the 4 months, We had a 22, these were all infertile women, 23% success rate, which is much more important than that, was we increased the likelihood of getting pregnant by between 150 and 260% with no human interaction in the app. And that was before the AI was, because it's like the early version of it. There wasn't even any AI. There wasn't all this like, it's a much like lighter version of the app. So I'm really like, the menus weren't personalized. They were kind of like general fertility, whatever, healthy fertility meals and things like that. And so, one IUI increases your likelihood of getting pregnant by about 10%. And it does nothing to, you don't get healthier, and it doesn't do anything to help you stay pregnant. I think that's the biggest piece with IUI. We need to help people to get ready to stay pregnant. Like, yeah, it's fine to use IUI, but if you're really tired, if you don't have enough blood, if your temperature is too low, so unlikely that you'll stay pregnant. It ends up just being a waste of money and emotions, because you're like, oh, we just spent $2,000. If you go to Vegas and you gambled $2,000, you're like, surely I'm going to win something, and then you get nothing. And you're like, well, there wasn't a good chance that you were actually going to you didn't even have the house odds, right? 50-50 chance.
Yeah. IUI is insemination, right? Like, okay.
Yes. Thank you for that clarification. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just making sure.
Try to avoid the jargon.
Yeah. So what's your advice to a listener who is struggling with fertility right now and is overwhelmed by all the information out there? Obviously, like, download the app, but also, more from the emotional side of things, because it is so overwhelming. What is your advice to her?
So my advice, that there's so much to do. The thing that makes it less overwhelming is the right information. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, if you're listening from the beginning, just go back, rewind, and listen to that ideal state and figure out, like, I always just call them potholes. Like, what are your potholes? And see if you can kind of like connect those potholes. And if you think about taking a supplement, when we have a quiz, if you don't want to use the app, you can just get personalized supplements, but you don't want to do that. You can say, like, okay, I have insulin resistance. You can go to Google and you say, what are the best supplements for don't take supplements for fertility. Don't take supplements for PCOS. Take supplements for the things that are problems. And if you can keep saying, but what's the underlying cause? Like, well, what's the underlying cause of insulin resistance? Well, stress, what you eat, and how you digest. You can take supplements to help with that. But if you layer those other three things on it, you get like 100 times faster results. So the more small things, like you have one thing, maybe you have three things, maybe there's not enough blood. You only have 1 day of bleeding out of 4. That's a real problem, because not only is there not enough blood for implantation to support, the fact that you only make 1 day of bleeding tells me that there's a resource problem, right? Why can't you make enough blood, right? Either you're using it, like doing, over exercising and consuming it, or what you're eating or digesting isn't enough to like actually make the building blocks to make the marrow, to make the lining. And we got to fix that, because we need those resources for your baby. You got to grow a turkey, and you need a lot of resources to do that. And so that's where I would start doing, is just trying to break it down to the simplest things. And if you're going to do your own research, just look up, like, what are the behaviors I can change? What are the foods I can eat? What are the foods I should stop eating? All of those things. And if you want to DIY it, you can do all that. And that makes it less like, because fertility, like, it seems like one thing because we call it one thing, but like, it isn't one thing. It's so many things. And I think that while it's confusing, there isn't a single study that shows that stress causes infertility. There's not a single, even they looked at like places where there were wars, and people were getting bombed all the time, assuming that's a pretty stressful, like living in Gaza or something. They did not see lower fertility rates. But I think the limitation in that study is those were like temporary. But I think most women live in a chronic state of stress. When I started, I've been researching heart rate variability as a biometric for women's health for a few years. And when I first started researching it, heart rate variability isn't heart rate. Heart rate is like 60 beats per minute. Heart rate variability is if you watched it over a minute, how much variation. So it shouldn't be 60, 60, 60, 60. Your heart rate is reflecting how your nervous system is responding to the environment. So what's happening is like, I'm sitting here chatting with you. I'm by my window for good light, and say like there's a loud noise in the parking lot. And I'm like, so a person who has a high heart rate variability, they'll be like, oh, it's okay. That was just like a little fender bender. Everything's fine. And in a few minutes, you would come out of flight or fright and down regulate, which is important, faster, because the longer you stay in flight or fight, the longer you're draining the adrenals and getting all the, stress hormones. Person who's in low resilience, like 20, 30 heart rate variability, they see that, they get all worked up and they can't downregulate. And for hours they stay, and even they're replaying it and telling it to me, I was on this podcast date and then there was this crash outside and I got so scared, it really freaked me out. Then they traumatize themselves again. And they just can't get out of it. Their vagus nerve is simply like not toned enough to yank them out and get them back to normal. And so if you fix the energy piece, you got to look at heart rate variability, because if your heart rate variability is really low, you're getting sucked into hypervigilance too often. And people like, I'm sleeping better, I'm eating better, I'm still so tired. We look at their heart rate variability and it's really low. And if you wear like an Apple Watch, it can check it. We have a wearable ring, the Halo. You can monitor your blood sugar, your temperature, and your heart rate variability remotely with the ring. But you can Apple Watch. There's some apps that can do it too. I like the apps because you can just put your finger on your camera and it measures it in real time. So say something happens and you get, oh shit, I got really scared. Wait 5 minutes and take your heart rate variability. You can see how bad it got because of it.
Okay.
Right. You say, oh, I got real tweaked. My heart rate variability dropped down to 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
And just be compassionate to yourself, because raising heart rate variability is very slow. You're literally raising your nervous system's resilience to the environment. And it's not fast. There's not a supplement you can take for it. You have to work on it. Breath work is incredibly valuable. I like this guy on YouTube, Breathe with Sandy. I have promoted him like crazy. I should be his agent. But it's free. He's got like 30 really good breathwork sessions on his YouTube, Breathe with Sandy. And he's a sweet guy, seems like. And he has like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes. So you can kind of get your fill. So if you're really working on it, check that out. And I use a device called a pulsetto.
Okay.
It kind of looks like headphones, sort of. I have headphones over here. Actually, I can just show you. Just wait. Yeah. It's kind of a cool thing. So this is a pulsetto. I'm not an affiliate of them or anything, but you put it on. It has little metal things, and these things deliver a little electric current. And I know that seems kind of scary, but it's not shocky. You put a little lube on your neck, and then, because for conduction, they just put it on. It has an app, and you turn it on, 10 minutes. And it basically stimulates your vagus nerve for 10 minutes. And the vagus nerve is basically the thing that determines your heart rate variability. So the more toned that it is, the higher your number. And this basically is like weightlifting for your vagus nerve. It's not cheap, but you don't have to do anything. Like you can do it while you're on a meeting. You can do it while you're driving. You can,
That's pretty
it's
cool.
good for sleep. But it's like $280. It's not cheap. But they do have a 30. Again, I'm not an affiliate of them. I don't want to seem like I'm promoting it, but it has really helped me a lot. So if somebody is like really wants to hardcore improve their energy, improve their health, for me, when you improve your heart rate variability, you improve the quality of your life, because mine was like 10 when I started. It was so low. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, because it's a strong predictor of longevity, heart rate variability. And I just had been through a really stressful situation, both health and personal, and it was just really blown out. And so, but then I was just so fragile. Like anything that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, just so whatever. Then over about 6 months, I got it up to 110. And when my heart rate variability was 110, nothing bothered me. Really? Like people like almost get in a crash. And oh my God, those people almost hit us, but like nothing happened. Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh my God, oh shit, that was so scary. No, all that was gone. I was like, oh my God, that was so scary. Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really helpful. So if you're interested in health or anything, HRV is actually quite cool. And actually we're using it to predict we're going to use it to predict adverse birth events in pregnancy.
Okay. That's amazing. You're making me think if you haven't read it, there's a book, The Hidden Power of the Five Hearts by Kimberly Snyder. And it's a very it's like a spiritual side of it. I mean, she does talk science in there a little bit about the studies too, but it's mostly a very spiritual thing. And she goes through like these 5 heart stages, but a lot of it is ultimately like sort of like a meditative book. And there's like different meditations and stuff to do in there and guides that she has for you. And ultimately it like improves your heart rate variability. And she has like
and coherence too, probably.
Yes, coherence. Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Okay, thank you. I will definitely do that.
Yeah.
Have you read the book? Have you read the book Calling in the One?
No. I'll write that one down.
It's a book for meeting like your mate. I've been dating for a long while. And somebody gave me this book, but the book is actually very beautiful. It's beautiful. Like I just think that unfortunately we as women, we really struggle with self-esteem and self-loathing and, lack of acceptance of ourselves. And this book is basically about self-love, and it's a workbook.
Okay.
And it's really easy peasy, and it's so joyful to read. It's like on the more little bit spiritual, not religious, but a little bit spiritual. And so you read for like one page, and then she gives you something just to practice for the day. And so it's like, it's very bite-sized, but it's really beautiful. And crazy things were happening to me when I was doing this book. And some of the exercises are just like she's like, you do this exercise where you like stretch out your arms way, way wide, and then you just bring them in. And all you do is like, as you're saying that, you're like, I'm worthy to give and receive love. And she's like, but I want you to, when you say it, I want you to really feel it and say, receive love, and really have it. And she's then go out in the world and practice.
Yeah.
And she's like, every time you go to the grocery store, when you're checking out, I want you to like make eye contact with the person who's checking you out and stop what you're doing. Don't like where you're, and say, hey, how's your day going today? And wait, and really wait, and let that person connect with you. And people were so happy. Like you could tell, they could tell that you're really being authentic, and they're like, oh, gosh, thanks for asking. I'm kind of having a little bit of a rough day today or whatever. And I don't know, it's just your book made me think of that book because maybe your listeners would enjoy it. Don't worry about it. It talks about calling in your mate. But I think it's also like for women who are trying to get pregnant, I say it's like calling in your baby, because that's the one for you. Because when you can't get pregnant, that is where the self-loathing gets on crack. It's straight up hatred. Like, I hate my body. I hate myself. I'm broken. I'm worthless. Yeah. Like any little bit of low self-esteem gets really like, I can't even, women tell me things like, I can't even do the things that God put me on this earth to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, God put you on the earth to do a lot more than just have a baby. Trust me. But
right. Yeah. But that's like the societal, message. And that's why it hits so hard, is because of all of these, roles that we assign to women and these strict boxes that we put people in. If a woman is struggling with infertility, it's like a direct attack on her womanhood. And it feels like all of a sudden your purpose is like not what you thought it was, because we tell women all the time that their sole purpose is to just have children. And it's
especially now in the political climate that we're in right now, they really want us to have babies.
And it's making a lot of us want to have babies less, especially when they're gutting healthcare for said babies.
Well, I know there's sort of a like problem there, because they're like, well, we want to have a lot more babies, but they're making it very hard for OB-GYNs to do their job safely. Like in Texas, because we have really strict abortion laws, although my daughter said they just changed it just the other day, but like up until very recently, you could be raped by your father and go get an abortion, and your father could sue you for $10,000 for having an abortion. Like, you are not protected from incest, from rape. Like, you are not getting an abortion after 12 weeks. But unfortunately, like, if you're a kid, you wouldn't, like, especially if you're a kid getting, I mean, it's kind of a downer for your show, but like, if you're getting like molested by your stepfather or your father, whatever, that girl might not even know she's pregnant to know until she's, really late and takes a pregnancy or whatever. So
exactly. Yeah. Was it Texas? I don't remember if it was Texas or a different state, but
if it's real bad, it was Texas.
It was a 9-year-old. It was a 9-year-old that was, the victim of rape and pedophilia. And they essentially forced her to have the baby, or are forcing her to have the baby. This really wasn't that long ago, but it's dangerous. She's 9. She's
9. Her pelvis is like this big,
exactly. It's incredibly dangerous. Could risk her fertility for the rest of her life. So
that makes me disgusted. That makes me really, it just makes me sad. I'm just surprised. Like, I'm surprised that only half of the women in our country are outraged by all of this.
I just had a TikTok blow up because after the recent shooting in Missouri, I said, if you don't care about gun control, you're not pro-life. Get the fuck out of here. It's that you can't argue with that. That's the truth.
Yes.
It blew up. Like, a lot of people were like, yeah, like, say it louder. And then there were obviously people that came in that were like, it's a mental health issue, not a gun issue. And I was like, it's actually both. It's both. it was just, yeah, it was a whole thing, but it blew up. But yeah, you're so right. It's the amount of women that are not outraged by it is disgusting.
I just don't understand it. I just don't.
Okay, well, we'll get back on track here for the last for the last question.
Okay.
This is a question that I like to ask all of my guests on the show, and you can, take it in any direction that feels right for you. But I know that everyone is going to love this episode, no matter their family plans. There's so much good information, good, like, actionable steps for people. So I have one last question, that if you could rewrite the health class curriculum that every woman deserves, what would your first lesson be?
My first lesson would be exactly what we talked about, is like, what does an ideal menstrual cycle, just those, it includes energy and temperatures. What is ideal? So that at least women have an accurate baseline of like what we're looking for, and help them understand that any departure from that is not necessarily something to be afraid of, but it's basically your body's going, hey, check it out. Like, this part's not actually, it's just a check engine light, And then if we just pay attention to it early, it's actually so easy to repair those. It's when we ignore them for 15 years that they become really ingrained as part of our, like, the way that our bodies operate. And so untangling takes longer. So that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Plus, like, tons of sex ed.
Yes, so true.
I can't believe we don't,
that most people
in Texas, you just get abstinence. So you can't get an abortion and you don't get sex ed.
Oh my God. It's these people are just so dumb. There's people that are really calculated about it, and then there's people that are just dumb. And that just blows my mind. Like, these dots are so easy to connect, and people just aren't doing it based on some moral high ground that they created.
Well, what we're going to do, so I have a different TikTok that's about periods called, like, the period expert.
Okay.
And I started that during the pandemic and had several 100,000 young girls watching,
Awesome.
asking questions about first periods. And I was getting so many DMs. I started doing a live every day, and that was like huge because people were bored as hell during the pandemic, right? I'd have like 2, 3, 4,000. And so what I realized is that they asked me, the two most common questions they asked me is, when is my first period going to come, and how do I make it come faster? And which is not in my generation. We didn't really want our periods to come,
No.
but I think now it's like more makes you grown up,
Yeah.
gives you status. Maybe the boys talk to you. I don't know. But they were really interested in how to make it come faster. And so I was like, well, your period is a reflection of your health. And so if you want your period to come faster, here's the things that matter to your period: your energy, how you nourish yourself every single day. So what you eat, how you digest it, how you stress, like how do you cope with stress, and how do you move, and how do you sleep? And so I had this idea that, like, as we're building all these individual platforms for PCOS, endometriosis, fertility, postpartum, pregnancy, soon I'm going to go back and build a totally different version of the app for those girls to predict their first period. And then what they'll track are those things that make their period come, because they care about those things. And then we'll teach them, oh, well, I see, you're eating only Hot Pockets every day. I wonder if we can, like, make a pizza recipe together this weekend and see if we can make your own, whatever.
Yeah.
Really mentor them and love them and teach them sex ed, like appropriate, nothing like just the basics, right?
Yeah.
Like the basics. Because I feel like we can't send young women out into society and think that they're going to have a shit chance of actually being their most powerful selves without understanding their architecture, And I want to see, like, 80% of women have life-interrupting PMS and menstrual pain. 80%. And when I read that study, I found that when I was working on my book, I was like, what would happen to society if we liberated all of those girls? Don't take that as an insult. I just call everybody a girl. If we liberated all of them from their period pain and their PMS, and they were just their most badass self every day, what would happen in society? What would they put up with that maybe they're not putting up with now?
The patriarchy would crumble. It would crumble. Yeah.
That's where the reckoning happens, right? When we're like, no, my period's great. My period is my superpower. My period is the unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Because with my period, I know what's happening in a way that you don't know. We can actually, a semen analysis is very similar in terms of a reflection of men's overall health. But they got to go to the doctor for it, and it's a couple $100, and you got to masturbate to get the result. Women, you just have to go to the bathroom, and there it is.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so amazing. Yeah, one day the ladies will be back in power, and
We'll be
the
at the top being like, we did it.
yes. Yeah, I would love for every woman listening to this to think of their period as their superpower, even as somebody with endometriosis who has a lot more struggle when it's not just a hormone balancing issue. For me, I still consider my cycle my superpower and will never stop experimenting with myself to, diminish the effects that that disease has on my life. So there's hope for everybody, even with um, you know, an underlying disease or something like that. And I can't wait to try. I'm definitely going to try out the free month with Conceivable, like you said, just
We're good.
substituting, optimal health for the word fertility instead. And I can't wait for all of the new things that you are coming out with as well. I will definitely be staying updated on that. Where can people find you? I know you mentioned TikTok.
So the best way to find me consistently is on our website, conceivable.com. The reason that I'm not saying TikTok, I'm your fertility expert on TikTok, and we are on Instagram, smaller following on Instagram, but TikTok is going away. And on September 5th, a new version of TikTok that's going to be US only TikTok will be released, and we're going to move over there, but we probably are not going to have any followers. But I'm going to try to download all my videos and upload them over there just to get a head start. They say it's going to be called M2, but like look for me on the new TikTok, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or just visit us at conceivable.com. You can download the app from the App Store.
Perfect.
Conceivable, Kai with Kirsten. And again, free for the first month. You have nothing to lose. You will learn a lot.
Yeah.
Like I just encourage people to take advantage of that free month. It actually cost us a ton because Apple takes $5 of the dollars right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we need the $10 because it uses so much AI. Every time you use the AI, that costs us.
Mm-hmm.
And but we really want people to be able to see that, like, if you engage with it every day, use the therapist, follow your menus, track, do what she says, take your supplements. It is not possible that you will not see pretty significant changes even in the first month.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, definitely can't wait to try. I will link all of that below for everybody as well for
Thank you.
easy access. Thank you so much for being here today, Kirsten. This was an amazing conversation. For all the listeners out there, make sure you check out the show notes so you can find all of those links, rate and review, share with a friend that you think would benefit, and class dismissed.
Loved it.